Hey guys, welcome back to NY Sports MC. I got a special guest on with me today from Sunshine Sports Network. He is a Dolphins YouTuber, if you can't tell by the background. Check out his content. I got it in the description below. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, click the notifications and make sure you're tuning in for the Sunday live streams at 9 p.m. Today we're going through our AFC East ranking series, and as you guys have chosen, we're going with the tight ends today. But before we get into that, I'm going to turn it over to him, let him give a little plug for his channel, what he's doing over there.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me on. Just to start off, I really appreciate it. Super cool to talk to other YouTubers about that are within the division, kind of about what's going to happen this year. So it's super cool to connect with you. I appreciate you having me on. Yeah, my channel is the Sunshine Sports Network. Started it up a few months ago. It's going really well. I love it. Super fun. Primarily Dolphins, but I do cover a ton of other stuff, especially like the breaking news around the NFL. Covered definitely a lot of free agency in the draft, do mock drafts and all that stuff. So if you guys are interested, feel free to check it out, subscribe if you want. And yeah, appreciate it, man.
No problem. So yeah, we're going to hop right into the tight ends. Let's go worst to first. Who do you got number four?
Number four. Yeah. Number four is the Patriots. Yeah, it's going to be a rough year, I think, for the tight ends. They're going to be relying on two rookies, I think, primarily. Gronk hasn't been around for a few years now. And now that he's traded, there's really no hope of him coming back. Ben Watson retired. So there's not, a ton of, answers at tight end. And, they did draft a couple of guys, in this year's draft, but without Tom Brady to throw to him, it could really be like a shaky scenario with the tight ends. I think Devin Asiasi has a lot of potential. He played really well in college, especially his final year. And, I don't know. I think he could be a really nice piece down the road. But for right now, for the Patriots, depending on, two rookies to kind of produce the most out of the tight ends, it's going to be a rough year.
Yeah, I agree. I have the Patriots on number 4 too. This is not saying, like you mentioned, it's not saying that they cannot move up these rankings throughout the season or even next year, since they did go out and draft 2 tight ends. We as Jet fans know that for sure because they traded up with us at that pick. I think it was 101 to secure one of those tight ends. So, whenever it comes to tight ends and Bill Belichick, obviously he has a history of selecting some pretty good ones with Gronkowski and Hernandez before he got into a lot of trouble. But yeah, they really had nothing at the position before. That's why they had to use 2 different draft picks on the position. I mean, ESPN has Matt Lacoste as their starter right now. He had a PFF grade of 54. He only had 13 catches. So not really a threat in the passing game. So they are going to rely on those rookies to be the threats in the passing game. The other guys they have are more blockers. So, and especially with, like you mentioned, Brady leaving, them going to essentially what's a rookie quarterback if Stidham is starting.
Right.
It's going to be a struggle for them for sure. So
if play well, sorry to cut you off. If Stidham does play really well, I think there's a ton of potential, and I think they could move up the list because Asiasi's he's a really nice go up and get a just kind of pure pass catcher. But then Dalton Keene's really versatile too. So he can provide like a lot of different moving around, and Belichick loves to use those kinds of guys. So I think a lot of it is dependent on Stidham and his production. So maybe, I think this year is going to be a good time to see, has this been just a system the entire time? And that's why Brady was so successful with all these guys. If Stidham's able to produce in the system, Belichick continues to go in, the trend that he has with, plugging guys in who probably other teams wouldn't be starting and being successful with them, they could be really, really good. So, I think Asiasi has a ton of potential. I like him a lot. He was my second graded tight end in the draft.
Yeah. So I agree. This is going to be a big year with the whole, was it Belichick, was it Brady, was it a combination? I think that if Belichick proves something this year, it's a lot more impressive than what Brady would do, as a little side tangent, since we mentioned it, because I think obviously Brady's got a much better team around him than what New England still has left there. So it's definitely going to be interesting. If he can get these guys to play well, that just proves how great of a coach he is. But
right.
I'll go first on this one. I have the Bills at number 3. They got 2 pretty good tight ends. Dawson Knox was their rookie from last year. He had a 60 PFF grade, 28 catches, 388 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He showed some signs last year. Definitely has some room to grow. He dropped a few easy ones. I think I saw that he had 6 or 7 drops last year. So that's definitely something he has to clean up. He needs to be that security blanket for Allen. And we'll see if he can make that step. But, the drops and the lower production than the other two teams puts in there. And then Tyler Kroft is just that veteran backup, kind of can do a little bit of both.
Right. Yeah, no, I totally agree. I have the Jets at 3-2. Dawson Knox was good. Yeah, he only started 11 games. What's that?
The Bills, you mean? You said the Jets at 3.
Oh, my bad. Sorry. Yeah, the Bills. Yeah, no, Bills at 3. Dawson Knox was good. Only started 11 games. So, missed out on, 5 starts that he could have. Now, he did play in 15, so he had enough time on the field. I think his catch percentage was only like in the 50s. It was like 56%. So, it was definitely weird, for him with all the drops, but he does have a lot of potential. If he can, get his hands together and really, become a little bit more consistent catching the ball. And then I think also Josh Allen just has to work on his accuracy and his overall, processing. So if those two guys, step up, I think the Bills tight ends could be good. And then Kroft is just a vet. So, I mean, he could add just some experience, a little bit of, teaching, kind of help him, grow into the NFL a little bit. He's more of a blocking tight end too. So I don't think he'll do a lot offensively. And then you've got Lee Smith and Tommy Sweeney who, they're just backups. But, Dawson Knox, he's got a lot of potential. But right now it's just one guy. And I think that's where, that's what's going to separate the top 2 teams from the bottom 2 teams is, if you only have one guy, I think that, you're going to be towards the bottom of the list here.
Right. And I think with the tight end position, it's kind of interesting because it's very similar to the quarterback position in the fact that this division is very young at this position. And there's a lot of potential in some of these guys. So these rankings are what we have them as right now as we stand today going into the 2020 season. But with any young player at any position on any team, you never know what can happen, who's going to really burst onto the scene and who may underwhelm. So these rankings can definitely change, but this is where we have them now. So it's going to be an interesting position to watch in this division. So go ahead. I'll let you go first on number 2, as we only have the Jets and the Dolphins left.
Right. Yeah. So number 2 is definitely the Dolphins. Now, what I just said with the, only having one guy, I actually don't think this necessarily applies to Miami right now just because of Chan Gailey coming in. He's our new offensive coordinator, and he's got a different, scheme, a different offensive system where I think Gesicki is going to line up a lot as, a wide receiver for the majority of his snaps. And Chan Gailey doesn't run a lot of multiple tight end sets. He usually runs with one, puts him on the outside, lets him act as a receiver. And Gesicki's going to be good in that regard. I think it depends a little bit on who's throwing him the ball. If the offensive line can step up and play better than I think that they will. I think there's a lot of question marks about what could happen. But Gesicki had a good year last year. He kind of came into his own, showed that he can play. He had a lot of go up and get him, situations where he got up, he got up and got him. He had a really good year. And that was with a lot of instability on that offense. So I think with Chan Gailey, the system, I think Gesicki is really talented. He's got a lot of potential. He is the only guy. They have Smythe, who's a blocker. And then, Chandler Cox is just a hybrid fullback and Michael Roberts. But I think with the talent that Gesicki has, with, the tons of upside, I think that there's a lot of room to grow right now too, but, could be one. If he has a breakout year and he's really the only tight end that's getting used, they could be one. But right now I see them as the number 2.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Gesicki in at least one of those 2 games last year absolutely destroyed us. He had a big game. I don't have the exact numbers right in front of me, but I remember him being a big problem for us in at least one of those games last year. So I have the Dolphins at number 2 as well. Gesicki, like you mentioned, had a pretty good season, 60.5 PFF grade, 51 catches. He had the most catches of anyone in the division last year. Also had the most yards at 570 and had 5 touchdowns. So definitely had the stats to put him up there for sure. I think with him, kind of like you mentioned, the consistency, his rookie year was not as good as this last year. So we just got to see him do it on a game in, game out basis. And like you mentioned, a lot of it's going to be on that offensive line. Who's at quarterback? How much time do they even have to get the ball out? And with Ryan Fitzpatrick back there, we all in the division pretty much know it. He is Fitzmagic for a reason. And this is his disappearing act this year. So we will have to see what he does. He usually really, really gets you excited that first year. And then you're like, yeah, Fitzpatrick's going to be good this year, and then falls flat on his face. So we'll have to see if he can reverse that trend that he's been having going on.
I mean, he's a year older too. So there's a lot of I've got a lot of hesitation whether Fitzpatrick's going to be as good as last year. I mean, I don't think the offensive line improved that much, and he's a year older. So if anything, I would see Josh Rosen throwing Gesicki the ball a little bit more this year. I think it would be beneficial just for the Dolphins to give him a shot. But, yeah, Fitzmagic, it's for sure, the situation that we're in. It's his last year in the NFL, though, so I'm not looking to him to produce a huge season anyways, because if we wind up with another high draft pick, it's fine. That way, Tua is stepping in to a relatively good team next year anyways.
Right. You got to love the lumberjack look that he has, though, with the big beard and the exactly. Pro. So I'll lead here. Number one, obviously, we both have it. So we both had the same rankings here. I have the Jets number one. We'll look at last year's stats. You had Ryan Griffin was the top tight end for us last year. Didn't play the whole season, got hurt towards the end. Had a 61.9 PFF grade, which would make him rank number one in PFF standpoint. 34 catches, 320 yards, and tied with Gesicki for the most touchdowns at 5. I think he's actually going to be our backup tight end this upcoming year, with Herndon really being the number one. I would love to see us use 2 tight end sets this year, especially with the real lack of depth at the wide receiver position. We have Perryman, Mims, and Crowder, but then not much really behind that. So I wouldn't mind going with more 2 tight end sets. So Herndon last year, unfortunately, served a suspension that he got from a DUI right after he was drafted the year prior. They just didn't issue the punishment until the next year. So he missed the first 4 games, comes back, gets hurt, breaks his ribs, and really only played in 1 game, not even a full game. So I looked back at his PFF grade for 2018, 2018, his rookie season. 74.4 PFF, which is by far the best grade in the division. 39 catches, 502 yards, and 4 touchdowns. He didn't even start the first few games, as we had some I forget who else was playing on a tight end for us that year, but he was in the backup role in the beginning. What was that?
Oh, no, not a Nunwa. He's more of a wide receiver.
Yeah, he's a wide receiver. So he's just really, really came onto the scene late in his rookie season, was really looking to be a breakout star last year, but unfortunately between the suspension and injuries, it did not happen. He had a great rapport with Sam Darnold. They built a very good chemistry together. I expect him to jump back, and all indications are the whole team is excited for him to come back and for him to he was supposed to be an integral part of that offense last year and then didn't really get to play. And I tell you what, if you go back and type in Chris Herndon one-handed catch against the Packers, it's one of the best catches I've ever seen.
Yeah.
So he's lunging forward with one arm out, and not only does he just make the one-handed catch, but as he's pulling it in, gets completely blasted on that same shoulder that he's pulling it in with and held on. It was an amazing catch. So with that, we also have Trayvon Wesco, one of those hybrid fullback tight ends, blocker, who's deceptively pretty good in the passing. And then Brown was decent last year too. He probably won't even make the team unless we plan on carrying 4. But if one of those guys like Herndon or Griffin are not ready coming off the injury, he's more than capable of being a receiving tight end as well.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think you guys are clearly the number one in the AFC this year, at least coming into the year. There's so much potential. I mean, Herndon will for sure be the starter. He's so talented. He is really, really talented. Just quick, strong, big. He's got good hands. He can do pretty much everything that you want him to do, and just, super talented. I think the question is whether he stays on the field or not. So if he can stay, smart off the field, and if he can stay healthy, I think it's a lock. He's really talented. Darnold, he needs to have a good year. Your offensive, I think with the tight ends, it really does depend a lot on the offensive line and quarterback. Obviously quarterback for who's throwing it to them, but, the offensive line really needs to be able to protect Darnold. If they do, I think that Herndon has a really nice year. Even with Gase, I think Gase is a terrible offensive play caller, but I think that Herndon just has that it factor that he can really make it happen. Griffin's a nice backup, and for Griffin to be a backup, I think is a good situation for any team, because Ryan Griffin's been around for a while and he's been good for a while. So I like Ryan Griffin. Like you said, I think Daniel Brown probably maybe cut, maybe not, but definitely backup status. And then same with Ross Travis. I don't know if he's even going to be on the team, or if he is now. I think he is now. But yeah, clearly just because of depth and the star potential of Chris Herndon, yeah, you guys are for sure sitting at 1. It could be a really nice year. And I agree with what you said with, trying to get as many weapons on the field for Darnold to work with this year, because he really just doesn't have a lot, especially losing Robbie Anderson, you draft Denzel Mims, but he's a rookie. So you want to get as much on the field for Darnold to work with. And, hopefully they run a 2 tight end set, pretty frequently. I think they will. I think Gase, he liked to do that a little bit in Miami. So we'll see.
Yeah, and the thing is, Darnold really likes that middle of the field. He's shown through his 2 years that he relies heavily on the tight ends. He likes to use them. He used Herndon his rookie year. He used Griffin this past year. So he definitely likes to use them. He likes to work that part of the field. So that's why I think getting them both on the field could pay big dividends for them as well. And Herndon is one where he doesn't have to be flexed out. He, like you said, he can do a little bit of everything. He can block. So you can have Griffin kind of flexed out because Griffin's not really the greatest of blockers, and have Herndon in the inline tight end spot as well, and work it that way as well. You don't always have to have them both flanked out either.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there's tons of versatility. I think these guys can. Yeah, there's just a lot of depth, a lot of versatility, a lot of pieces for Darnold to work with in the tight ends room. So, has lots of potential. Hopefully, everyone stays on the field, stays healthy, because it could be really good for you this year.
Right. So just to recap, guys, we both had the same exact 4. We had the Patriots at number 4, just because of the lack of veterans there, the 2 rookies, and we have to really see what they're going to do. We had the Bills at number 3. Dawson Knox showed some potential in his rookie year, but really needs to clean some things up. We had the Dolphins at number 2 with Mike Gesicki. Really showed a lot of potential this past year. We're looking for a little more consistency, and the offensive line play from the Dolphins could play large in how well he can perform this year. And then the Jets at number 1 with all the depth and the star potential of Chris Herndon. So any last words? You wanted one last shout out to your channel before we sign off here?
Yeah, I just want to say thanks again for having me on, man. It's a ton of fun. I really like doing these kinds of videos. So if you'd be more than welcome to come on my channel if you'd like, and I look forward to working with you again, man.
Yeah, definitely. So like I said, we'll talk about working you on to some more of these seasons whenever our calendars can align. I'd love to come over to your channel. So guys, remember, make sure that you subscribe to Sunshine Sports Network. Like I said, a lot of great content over there. It is in division rival, but it's always good to know your competitors. So you get a lot of good information on the Dolphins from him. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Tune in to this Sunday night shows at 9 p.m. as well. And as always, Jet up.